in at number 10, we have the Nexium. The Nexium have been in the news a lot recently. I'm not totally sure if I'm pronouncing it right because it's spelled very strangely. The cult was allegedly an American marketing company that offered professional and personal development through a series of executive success programs. Now it turns out that it was basically a pyramid scheme, which, you know, kinda sucks, but beyond that, it seems that the Nexium have been accused of housing a cult called DOS, or often called the Vow. This is a cult where women are branded and forced into sexual slavery, allegedly. Nexium's leader, Keith Ryanair, is said to be the head of the cult too. Here's a snap of one of the so-called branding wounds. Now each stamp is said to contain Ryanair's initials. Dynasty actress Catherine Oxenberg claims that the group brainwashed her daughter, convincing her to send them nudes as collateral so that she's deterred from ever leaving. On top of that, it is said that members are said to provide secrets and bank details to stop them ever departing. It seems that in the DOS cult, members are forced to recruit more people, and if they don't, they're beaten with paddles. It is said that there is an Emmy award-winning actress high up in the group recruiting new members. Now this is all going on in Albany, New York, apparently. Actress Alison Mack of Smallville has pleaded guilty to racketeering charges brought against her for her involvement in the cult. She said, "I'm very sorry for those who I've hurt through my misguided adherence to Keith Ryanair's teachings." Okay, was anyone else sitting there listening to this thinking about the whole collateral thing and thinking it sounds similar to another popular American organization? Because hello, Church of Scientology at number 9. A lot of people consider the Church of Scientology to be a cult, and I mean... Actress Elizabeth Moss has urged people to be more considerate towards people who have different beliefs to them, which I can totally get on board with, but that being said, the rumours surrounding the church are actually pretty intense. The church is famously attended by Tom Cruise. Now if the rumours are to be believed, then the Church of Scientology gets people in with a personality test. It then gets them to work at the church for free or donate a boatload of money in order to proceed to the next level. They are also required to give collateral to the church and sign a billion-year contract to the cause. As they climb up the level, they are taught about the intergalactic overlord Xenu. On the Scientology website, there is a frequently asked question page titled, "Is Scientology a cult?" Now, according to the church themselves, no, it isn't. I quote, "It is a religion in the fullest sense of the word." They would say that though, wouldn't they? Coming in at number 8, we have the cargo cult. The cargo cult story is basically a morality lesson for those thinking of abusing their powers over others. Stephen Tari gathered 6,000 disciples in Papua New Guinea's jungles and encouraged them to be part of his sect. He started wearing white robes to conduct his sermons and preached his own version of gospel, calling himself Black Jesus. His cult relocated to the jungle and lived a somewhat tribalistic existence with Tari at the helm. As well as indoctrinating people to believe he was a holy man, he also encouraged them to do his bidding. He would lead people to murder and eat others. On one occasion, he even slaughtered a virgin that he called his flower girl and encouraged his followers to drink her blood. One mother testified that she was made to drink her own daughter's blood. Now at one point, Tari was sent to jail for his crimes, but he managed to break free and back into the arms of his former cult. However, in 2013, he kinda got his just desserts. The cult went too far when they abducted and killed a 15-year-old schoolgirl from a nearby village. 80 men from her village then set upon Tari ahead of a big feast his cult followers had planned for him. Now he was pretty savagely hacked to death, but probably fair. Authorities in Papua New Guinea are worried that the cult still exists, with a new leader taking charge. Coming in at number 7, we have the Agori sect. Just when you thought you already had enough flesh-eating cults for one video, I am bringing in another, and they have a weird sex ritual thing going on too. Cults. So the Agori sect are involved in an ancient religion. They worship the Hindu goddess Shiva, or sometimes called Kali. Often this goddess is associated with death and destruction. A website I found about the sect told me that when Kali wants satisfaction, the usually celibate sect find a corpse to... you know, I don't need to say it, do I? This isn't the extent of their relations with the dead either. They will also eat their flesh from time to time. They also do believe in spiritual healing and transformative power, which is less threatening. I was almost in a bit of a, you know what, you do you kind of space, so long as they aren't hurting anyone and the dead people they do, you know, get with are kind of like former cult members that would have consented to that. But anyway, do you know what? After watching a video of the Agori talking to a journalist, I thought, again, maybe this isn't okay. And when I say maybe, I absolutely don't want to tangle with them. So basically the journalist goes to meet them and he's given a crown of teeth to wear, which is one thing.
Okay. Alright. Okay. Maybe I'll take this off right now and then...
But then the journalist asks a fair question and the answer is very stressful. Have a listen.
People on that side of the river are so afraid of the Agori.
Okay, the final straw for me is when this happens.
Why do...
Rightio then. Coming in at number 6, we have the Superior Universal Alignment. Luckily this cult no longer exists, but historically speaking, you wouldn't have wanted to meet them. The SUA was a cult founded by a woman in her mid-70s, Valentina de Andrade. It seems that the cult were prevalent in the 90s in Argentina. Their satanic murder rituals kind of overshadow the group's intentions, but it seems that de Andrade believes that she received a message from aliens that God does not exist, and that actually Jesus himself was an alien who was tasked with bringing about the end of times. Those who purged evil would be saved. How would one go about purging evil? Well, according to the aliens and the SUA, it would be killing boys born after 1981. Before, fine. Afterwards, evil. First, she tried to convince people to give up their children so they could have a spot on her spaceship, but in the end, the cult leader straight up encouraged her followers to abduct boys for sacrifice. In Argentina, at least 19 boys were mutilated and murdered. 5 of them were never found and a bunch more escaped, but some of the escapees had already been castrated. So grim. While the cult leaders were brought to justice in 2003, it seems that offshoots of the SUA may still exist in Austria. Coming into number 5, we have the Order of the Solar Temple. This cult was founded in 1984 by Joseph de Mambro and Luc Journet in Geneva, but they also had offshoots, and perhaps still do, in France, Australia, Canada and Spain. The order seemed to have been inspired by the ancient Knights Templar of France. The temple had many secret underground churches in Switzerland and had so-called lodges elsewhere in the world, covered in riches. It seems that the cult believed that God was a solar king and that their mission was to unite Christianity and Islamic faiths. In order to prepare for the second coming, the cult murdered a baby with a wooden stake at a lodge in Quebec. How to unite the people? Kill a baby. It's a kind of culty sense I've come to expect. Later they staged a reenacted Last Supper before killing dozens of people across the world, whilst other cult members committed mass suicides in response to, I quote, the hypocrisies and oppression of this world. 2 days before Christmas in 1995, 16 bodies were discovered in a star formation in the Vercors mountain of France. One of the dead included Olympian Edith Bonlieu. Now one of the leaders arrested was famous composer Michael Tabernick. He was cleared of the charges and is now a free man. He was the leader of the Brussels Philharmonic Orchestra right up until 2015. Coming into number 4, we have Happy Science. Wait, but the name sounds so friendly and fun, like I'm happy and I like science, maybe I found my people. Okay, don't joke about joining cults, Rebecca. People will take you seriously. So Happy Science are a new religious and spiritual cult founded by Ryu Okawa. Did I say that right? I don't know. Happy Science also doesn't have a lot to do with science at all, but they are working on the happy part. How do they get happy? Well, by denying historical massacres, saying they simply didn't happen. Happy Science claim to have 10 million followers around the world, which I do think is a bit of a stretch. They also claim they are in contact with aliens. And I know what you're thinking, but they have picture proof, except these pictures look suspiciously like stills from Star Wars in frames. Coming into number 3, we have the Temple of Lucifer. Vice did a great documentary about Colombia's Temple of Lucifer, and they are a satanic cult led by Victor Damian Rozzo, who claims to be none other than the son of the devil himself. It seems that Rozzo used to be a Catholic, but has decided to give his life to Lucifer and has made it his mission to recruit so-called Luciferians. The Vice video was published in 2017 and has had 2.4 million views. I honestly think it deserves more, it's a pretty interesting watch. So the Church of Lucifer actually has some pretty sweet decor. It's very nouveau Satan. There's sultry red leather chairs, red curtains, a big big black and red satanic pentacle on the floor, backlit upside down crosses, and an altar to the Dark Lord himself. Kinda made it sound a bit like I'm talking about Voldemort. I'm actually talking about SCP-1, the Red Devil himself, the creation of all evil. Rozzo has claimed that a lot of high-profile people, including celebrities, have secretly visited the temple. In the Vice documentary, it seems that locals are perturbed by the amount of animals ritually sacrificed by the group. Do you want a peep inside of the church? I think you do. Now his sermon is being led in Spanish, but let's have a look anyway.
Reconoció, le dio los créditos a mi señor Lucifer. Él mismo admitió que Lucifer.
Rozzo's invites people to become millionaires by making pacts with the devil, and honestly, I think that's kind of a bad idea. I don't really believe in it, but like, just go. Trust yourself to be a billionaire, not the devil. Ooh, coming into number 2, we have Aleph. Aleph, formerly known as Shinrikyo, is a horrifying Japanese doomsday cult. Again, I'm really sorry if I pronounced that wrong. This is their symbol, so watch out for it. Aleph was founded in 1987 by Shoko Ashara, a 40-year-old legally blind and former yoga teacher. He posed the religion under the guise of being a Buddhist group, and the group has traditionally been obsessed with prophecies. Aleph have been known to distribute anime and manga propaganda that cleverly hides their more radical ideals. Basically, to simplify this cult, they believe that the end of the world is coming and they want to be ready. The group have carried out several horrifying chemical attacks on the public too, including most famously the March 1995 Tokyo subway attack, which killed 13 commuters but affected over 1,000 people. Those who fall out of favor with the cult are murdered, their bodies are dumped. One super fun example was Kiyoshi Kiara, who was the brother of a member who escaped. He was abducted from Tokyo and taken to a compound near Mount Fuji, then cooked in a microwave-powered incinerator. You don't want to hustle with Aleph. While their leader Ashara has been arrested, Aleph still has around 2,000 members. Finally, coming into number 1, we have the KKK. Klan is basically another word for cult, and the Ku Klux Klan are an enduring hate cult that was founded on Christmas Eve no less in 1865 in Tennessee, USA. It seems that the headquarters these days hidden away in Arkansas. Most of you will have heard of the KKK. They're a white supremacist group associated with right-wing extremism and neo-Nazi ideals, even though they predate the Nazis. The KKK were more prevalent in the late 1800s to mid 1900s and would frequently be behind lynchings of African Americans. The KKK have been deemed a terrorist organization. Famously, they held terrifying rallies in their cult disguise costumes, and they would burn crosses and set fire to buildings of their enemies and worse. Children would and still are being raised in circles like this, believing staunchly in white purification. The history of the KKK is long, vast, gross, and not over. Ku Klux Klan chapters still exist in the US as well as Europe, Canada, and weirdly, Fiji.
Starting off this countdown, we have the Angel's Landing. In the early 2000s, a man named Daniel Perez, or Lou Castro, led a cult that lived at Angel's Landing. They all lived on a 20-acre property outside of Wichita, Kansas. Now, Perez had control of these followers because he convinced them that he was an angel and a seer that could look into the future and know exactly when they were going to die. Obviously, that was false. In reality, he would kill off his followers and use their life insurance policies to become rich. He was getting away with it for a while until police looked into the death of one of his followers, Patricia Hughes. In 2003, her dead body was found on the compound. Then in 2006, her husband mysteriously passed away. This all led the police back to Perez, who had changed his identity to Lou Castro. Eventually, he was caught and sentenced to 80 years in prison for the lengthy list of his disturbing crimes he committed. Yikes. In our 9th spot today, we have the Children of God. Formed in 1968, the Children of God, now referred to as the Family International, is a cult that believes in salvation and spiritual revolution and happiness. But as the group got a big following, their beliefs shifted. From there, the followers were forced to engage in dark practices, like having the females lure men into the cult by having intercourse with them. Sadly, the followers were often mistreated in multiple ways. One woman who was a part of this cult as a child referred to it as living hell. It literally traumatized her. 31 people died at the hands of this cult. And like I said, it's still active, but in 2004 just changed its name to Family International. Moving on to number 8, we have the Brethren. This one is quite interesting. So the Brethren have also been given the name the Body of Christ, or Brothers and Sisters, and even Garbage Eaters. Why? Well, you're about to find out, that's for sure. So for starters, this cult believes that the end of the world is near, and so they are told they have to purify themselves in preparation for the end of the world. They do this by selling their possessions and breaking ties with all their family and friends. They then live as vagrants, eating garbage, hardly ever bathing, and never receive any medical treatment. They also do weird jobs to make money, but then any money they earn just goes right into the group. Due to this lifestyle, a number of group members have had serious mental breakdowns, others have sadly taken their lives. Not a cult you would want to be a part of. Honestly, no cult you want to be a part of. Coming in at number 7, we have the Raelism. Founded in 1974, this cult believes that life was created by aliens. Yes, you heard me correctly, aliens. These aliens then assumed human form to go check in on Earth and see how things are going. These aliens are said to be people like Jesus or the Buddha. So this cult spends their days worshipping space aliens. The scariest part? In 2000, they claimed that they founded a cloning company and that they managed to successfully clone a human. Literally everyone went nuts, and the White House even got involved in this, even though they never had any proof of the cloning. Unless the White House was like, okay, we'll pay you guys, just give us this device so we can clone people, but it stays between us. Dude, imagine? Okay, like that's freaky. Coming in our 6th spot, we have Matamoros cult, aka the Human Sacrifice Cult. In 1989, a man named Mark Kilroy went missing when out on spring break. Turns out he was kidnapped and then lost his life to this cult. This cult was known to kidnap people and take their lives as a sacrifice. The leader of this cult, Adolfo Constanzo, told his members that by doing so, they would become invincible. Why would they need to become invincible? Well, they were not only a cult, but they were also drug dealers as well. But Constanzo promised that they would never be caught by the police so long they continued to harm and sacrifice others. In the end, Constanzo was caught and then was killed in jail. But rumor has it that the cult is still around to this day. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Doomsday Cult. Now, this one is pretty vague because there are a number of doomsday cults out there, but they all pretty much follow the same belief. Now, there are 2 types of doomsday cults. One that predicts disasters and thinks that the end is near, and the other one tries to destroy the earth to bring the world to an end. Either way, both are terrifying and you definitely don't want to get mixed up in it. Both cults have been known to brainwash their followers. So they don't believe what the media is telling them and only listen to the lies of their leaders. Either way, they believe that like, hey, we're gonna die soon, or hey, let's try and make everyone die soon. So it's terrifying. Moving on to number 4, we have the Order of the Solar Temple. This cult was born off of the beliefs of the Knights Templar, and is said to be one of the creepiest cults out there. It is believed to have been founded in the late 1970s to early 80s. For the most part, the cult was peaceful. They had some weird beliefs, but they didn't do any harm. That was until 1994, when they believed that a member's son was the Antichrist. As a result, they killed both individuals. Then they enjoyed a Last Supper before taking their own lives by poison. On that day, 53 cult members lost their lives. It's an absolutely terrifying and heartbreaking story. To this day, this cult still exists. Moving on to number 3, we have the Amshinrinko cult. Founded in 1984 by a man named Shoko Ashara, this is a doomsday cult as well as a terrorist organization. Basically, members of the cult believe that the end of the world was near, but that they were going to be the only survivors. Why? Well, the leader said he had powers and could transfer his spiritual power to his followers to take away their sins. In 1995, this cult carried out the deadly Tokyo subway sarin attack, where 13 people died and thousands got injured. Apparently, this was done as an attempt to start the apocalypse, but also to stop the authorities from shutting down their cult. As a result of this attack, 13 members of the group got the death sentence, including the leader Shoko. After his death, the name of the cult was changed, but to this day, it's still active. The cult was never banned and it has about 1,500 followers. Coming in at number 2, we have the Church of Euthanasia. Founded in 1992, this cult literally promoted people to take their own lives. Their whole belief was that the world was dying because of overpopulation. So they were like, let's get people to kill themselves to restore the balance in humanity. They even set up an assistance hotline where people could call in and someone would help them take their own life. That is seriously the most messed up thing I have ever heard. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Church of Scientology. Is the Church of Scientology a cult or religion? Well, a number of people think that it is indeed a cult. You've probably heard of it because of famous Hollywood star Tom Cruise. He's a very prominent figure in the church. And this cult is certainly one you never want to get involved in. For starters, once you're in, the church will force you to disconnect from people not involved in the cult. This includes your family and your friends. Jenna Miscavige Hill, a member of the church that left in 2005, had this to say about it, and I quote, "I was allowed to see my parents only once a week at best, sometimes not for years. So when you do want to leave, you literally have no one to go back to since you cut them out of your life. That's the other thing, leaving is so difficult. Apparently they will intimidate and harass you into staying. According to another ex-member, they also brainwash their followers. And if anyone misbehaves, they send them to this prison camp, where they are basically worked to death and barely fed to teach them never to be disobedient. There's also rumors that this cult commits crimes and murders, but they're so powerful that they can just get away with it all. If that's not scary, then I don't know what is."
Starting off at number 10, we have Winona Ryder in the Rainbow Family Commune of Living. If you're a fan of all the iconic 80s movies and Johnny Depp's Wino Forever tattoo, then you should know the name Winona Ryder very, very well. But what you may not know is that Ryder was raised in the Rainbow Family Commune of Living for most of her life. Ryder's family joined the commune when she was just 7 years old and lived a life solely on the land. No TV, no electricity whatsoever. So how on earth did Winona become so excited about acting? Well, it was actually reading that got her interested in the profession, and when her family moved out of the commune a few years later, she began auditioning. Thankfully, they left the cult life behind before it went really south, but Winona still describes her parents as the 60s hippie type. When she started going to regular school, however, she was still considered an outcast and suffered various types of verbal and physical bullying. But there's a reason we know Winona's name, because she's awesome and she turned whatever weirdness people thought she had into a prolific film and TV career. Go Winona. Number 9. The Organite Society with Jaden Smith. This next one has drawn in the likes of Jaden Smith and Kylie Jenner. If you're a follower of these two celebs, then you may have seen them holding strange pyramid objects that look like the product of one of those satisfying TikTok resin videos. Well, that's not entirely wrong. These objects are called Organites and are the signature object of those in the Organite Society. What are they? They are pyramids of Organite, which is a man-made crystal said to be able to realign and heal our imbalanced energies. According to the official website, an Organite is made from resin, metals, and quartz, which sounds like the perfect craft for all those TikTok resin hobbyists out there. The ideology behind the Organite Society stems from a banned Austrian psychiatrist named Dr. Wilhelm Reich. A student of Freud, he was expelled from the International Psychoanalytical Association after Freud found significant red flags in his practice and was like, nah, not this guy, get out. After escaping World War II Germany and coming to America, Reich brought his research with him. Unfortunately, I don't know, making human-sized boxes out of organic and inorganic material. He claimed that if people laid on top of the boxes, the orgon would reorganize their cosmic energies, even allegedly healing those with cancer. He was eventually imprisoned for spreading medical disinformation and ironically died of heart failure. But even after his death, Organites still live on and have obviously caught some significant attention. A part of me wonders whether Jaden and Kylie knew what they were joining, or if this was just something fun to make up parties. Coming in at number 8, we have David and Patricia Arquette. Though the entire Arquette family are actors, you may recognize the name David and Patricia Arquette for the shows like Medium and, I don't know, Scream. Alongside their interest in acting, the family also had a difficult upbringing linked to the Subud cult. Patricia was only 4 when they moved into the commune, and her brother David was in fact born there. But what is the Subud movement? Well, like many others, it's a cult built around a religious idea of finding the inner self and began in Indonesia in the 1920s. Centered around a practice called petition, members met around once or twice, men separated from women, to meditate and accept the power of God through movement. Wailing? Whatever they felt like. Basically sounds like they just did what they felt they needed to, or what they felt God told them to do. The Arquettes lived in a communal space with no washroom or electricity or running water in order to be brought closer to nature. The commune eventually became so poor that the government intervened and dropped off food for them. But apparently there was fun to be had at the commune, because very often the Arquettes would do performances. After a few years though, the family eventually moved back to Chicago after no longer being able to sustain themselves. We all know breathing is good for you. We need it. We literally can't survive without it. But some seem to think that's all we need to survive. Coming in at number 7, we have Michelle Pfeiffer and the Breatharian cult. A Breatharian believes that through strict meditation, they can reach a higher conscious state that allows them to be able to survive on air and sunlight alone. No food, nothing else. When Michelle was a young actress in Hollywood, she somehow got involved with a group of Breatharians. I also love the name, it's so literal. Like, cut straight to the point, we're about breathing air. Breatharians. Apparently they were very controlling and kept her on a strict vegetarian diet that no one could sustain. Though she never lived with them, she visited constantly due to pressure she received. This became such a financial burden on her because she had to pay every time she was there, which was a lot. She was quite literally a starving artist. Her ex-husband Peter Horton helped her get out of it due to a movie he was working on at the time that dealt with followers of the Unification Church. After doing more research, Michelle finally realized that she was in a cult and got out. Thank goodness she did, because this cult also had some deadly consequences. Some people have even starved themselves to death by their own hand. Most famously was Verity Lynn, who while attempting a 21-day Breatharian program died of hypothermia and malnutrition brought on by self-neglect. Coming in at number 6, we have Val Kilmer and the Christian Science Group. Here is another cult that has its followers believing in the power of prayer to cure all. We may not have seen much of Val Kilmer lately, unless you've been rewatching the 1995 Batman Forever or the Doors movie, but that's because we almost lost him. In 2014, Kilmer finally went to the doctor due to a massive lump in his throat and was diagnosed with throat cancer. Now, the Christian Science organization reneged this and said it was more of an idea of cancer rather than actual cancer. The group convinced him that he must instead relocate and dedicate himself to prayer so that his fear no longer manifested externally. Thankfully, his kids and family were like, "No, Dad, please, no, don't do that. That's not gonna work. That's not a thing," and thankfully convinced him to get the surgery he needed to survive. But even still, Kilmer attributes his healing to prayer and not, the doctors that helped him. Coming in at number 5, we have the surprising discovery of Glenn Close and the MRA. In 2014, the OG Cruella de Vil star revealed her family's experience with the moral rearmament cult. The MRA was founded by evangelist leader Reverend Frank Buckman in 1938 under the idea that to change the world you have to change the individual. Though that's not entirely a wrong way to look at global transformation, how he went about it was pretty, cultish? From age 7 to age 22, Glenn and her siblings were sent to live at the group headquarters in Switzerland. They indeed had a group mentality where everyone had to say and do all the same things. According to Close, if you even had desires to do otherwise, you were made to feel insanely guilty about it. When she finally broke away from the group, she wrote a furious letter to her father for what he had done by sending them to the group. She said as a result of her upbringing that she was terrified because she couldn't trust any of her own instincts, having entirely been defined by falsehoods while she was raised. Thankfully, she was able to find her way out of there, walk straight into acting school, therapy, and has now become the absolute icon she is today. Coming in at number 4, imagine your mom finally meets someone and you move in with him right away. Sounds like a suspicious setup? Am I right? This is an evil stepfather story. From age 7, famous rapper Angel Hayes was introduced to the Greater Apostolic Faith Group by her mother. According to Hayes, all the people within the community lived 10 minutes apart and were forbidden to speak to anyone else outside of it. Couldn't listen to music, wear jewelry, and even eat certain things. It continued to get darker and darker, and sadly Hayes experienced some of the worst kinds of assault Thankfully, Angel and her family escaped and she was out of there by age 10 and has built a phenomenal music career since then, which she has used to tell her story and reach out to those who need to hear the same. Her music is filled with passion and revenge for all those who wronged her inside this prolific cult. Her song, Cleaning Out My Closet, is the best example of how Angel has taken her story and used it to create badass music people need to hear. Coming in at number 3, before I continue to our top 3, please just reach down there, press that thumb, let us know you like us, and we'll be so grateful to you in return. Alright, coming in at number 3, we have Joaquin Phoenix and Rose McGowan with the Children of God cult. Both McGowan and Phoenix belonged to the Children of God cult during a period of time in their upbringing. The cult was helmed by preacher David Brantberg in, you guessed it, the 60s, 1968 specifically, and it initially began as a group for teens. It was fairly standard, the communes were isolated, they believed the end was nigh, and all the rest of the things you need for a cult. No one had jobs because they didn't want to belong to the system. Soon the group had hundreds of different communes, but it was soon revealed that more sinister things were happening. The group was revealed to contain and circulate sex trafficking, even using girls referred to as flirty fishers to enlist recruits at bars. When Phoenix's mother was introduced to this idea, the family got the heck out of there, and so did McGowan's. McGowan says that she must have gotten out by the skin of her teeth, but remembers seeing the kind of slavery that many women were forced into. But what's even crazier, guys, is that the group is still around today, though they've changed their name. It is now called the Family International, and members are now allowed to live privately in their homes and work outside of the commune. With the allegations, they now believe that the apocalypse is actually not here yet, and they still have around 1,700 members today. Yeah, if you just got a sinking feeling in your stomach, I did too. Coming in at number 2, we have Scientology. This next one is pretty controversial, as many debate whether it is a new form of religion or a business or a cult or all three. If you guess Scientology, then you are correct, and I almost don't even need to tell you who are our stars involved with it. We got Tom Cruise, we got Elizabeth Moss, we got Christy Alley, and John Travolta, and actually many more. One of the reasons people think this religion is so far-fetched was that it was found by an American science fiction writer, Ron L. Hubbard, in 1955. It was initially introduced as a kind of therapy called Dianetics, which sought to erase the content of the active mind so the soul could be more free. But Hubbard came to detest it, as many psychologists denounced it. He was like, oh, never mind, I hate it. Whatever. Scientologists mainly focus on the evolution of the spirit on Earth and something called the Thetan, which they believe is an extraterrestrial creature who created all things. Thetans are trapped within us and have lived multiple human lives. The goal of the Scientologists is to become more aware of the Thetan within them so that they can achieve abilities they never thought possible. I think. I don't know. Guys, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, Scientology is pretty confusing, to say the least. But for some reason, this science and faith-based religion has swept Hollywood, and its followers are devout, to say the least. But those who have left often have some strange things to say. One ex-member named Leah Ramini says that any materials not written by a Scientologist are taught to be lies set on tearing the religion down. Anyone who speaks out against the church is considered an enemy, and they work to tear that person down. Another way the church makes it so hard to leave. Also, remember how I said some people think it's a business? Well, there is a case for that. Apparently there are tiers that define how ascended each follower is, and that there is a top tier that they can reach. Thing is, they have to pay, and Leia says that in fact that there's no top tier and it's all about keeping the money flowing in. Listen, I've read some kick science fiction in my day, and sometimes I want to believe it's so hard. Like, literally any Doctor Who episode I'm in. Sweep me off into your TARDIS, alien boy. But this, well, it's up to you to decide. And here we are, at last but not least, number 1. A cult that has recently been coding headlines with the face of one familiar Smallville actress, Allison Max. NXIVM hit headlines as a cult revolved around a man named Keith Raniere. Initially begun as a self-help, multi-level marketing scheme for the heiress's CEOs, Hollywood actors, name anyone else who's famous, NXIVM has now been revealed as an abuse cult where its most devout followers would be branded and forced into sex Allison Mack was a fanatic within the cult and was even responsible for expanding and recruiting women for Rainier. In typical cult fashion, Keith was viewed as a god and savior, but when all the dirt got out, there was enough evidence to sentence him for 120 years in prison for all the abuse he dealt. The group was responsible for financial cons and ran for 20 years before information leaked about the cult. There is so much to unpack about this case, and no doubt you've heard about it. A lot of our top 10 have taken place in the 60s, which of course it was the hippie decade, you expect it, but even I can't sit still and watch an episode of Smallville without thinking about what was going on behind the scenes. Thankfully, the cult is no more, and many are being brought to justice.